I'm Carey Stinson, and my journey through life has been quite an adventure. For over 20 years, I played Barney the Dinosaur on tour and 7 seasons of the hugely popular TV show Barney and Friends. Now my journey is to bring together friends and guests from all over the entertainment world for inspiring and at times amusing behind-the-scenes conversation. I'm Carey Stinson, and this is Purple Roads. Welcome to Purple Roads. My name is Carey Stinson, and as always, I'm so glad you're here. This is an episode I have been wanting to do really since the beginning of Purple Roads. When I came up with the idea of doing Purple Roads and telling stories of all my friends and family from Barney, this was one that was important to me. Penny Wilson was our choreographer in a lot of places, my heart, my friend, such an important part of Barney. She passed away years ago, but I wanted to tell her story, and I want to tell her story with some people that I just absolutely love to death. So here is Nelson and, as I know her, Little Bit, and there they are. Oh my gosh!
Hey.
Hey, I guess I should have worn purple today. I didn't think about it, and then we would have been purple and green. But
Right,
you know.
purple earrings.
Oh, look at that! Yeah, nice.
And I've never worn yellow on this show before, so I don't know where that comes from. How are you guys?
Doing well, thanks. Doing well.
Wow. How have you been?
I've been great. I was telling Nelson when he popped on, it's been so long, but as soon as I see you guys' faces, it feels like I saw you yesterday.
It really does. It really does. It's crazy how that happens, especially when you've known somebody for so many years. It feels like yesterday and so long at the same time.
What was it? We did see each other though briefly in the Plano exhibit that you did, right?
We did.
Yeah, well, that was a couple of 3 years ago, whatever it was. But
It was, it's the whole social media thing too, right? Because I see what both you guys are doing and all.
That's true.
How busy you are, but there's nothing like this. And for you, Becca, but I always know you a little bit. I mean, you were, I'm trying to think how old, but 9 or.
I don't even know. I was trying to think about that earlier too, and I mean, it's all a blur at this point. I don't even remember how old I was because I feel like it's, Barney has been part of my life all my life, it seems. So it's hard to put a timestamp on it.
Yeah.
It would have been Radio City. That's the first time I met you, I think.
Okay, so 93, I think 93, 94.
I think it was right around there.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
It was a really big deal for me. I was very new in my career. And I probably knew your mom for a little bit, maybe met her a couple times before that. But the impact that she made and you made on me and started really at that time, at that event.
Yeah, that was a huge deal. I was about 9 or 10 at that point. And so for me, going to Radio City, in elementary school, and of course, all the kids were like, oh, Barney this, Barney, Barney, you like Barney. And then I got to go to Radio City for like an entire week, and then it was like the coolest thing. Like, whoa, this is really cool. So that was a pretty big deal. And it was obviously really cool, to work with you. And then here we are all these years later, still able to keep in touch, which is really neat.
I absolutely love it. And we're going to talk a lot about Radio City. Nelson, I kind of want to start with you because you were around when, Penny was there before me.
Yeah.
And,
the thing,
I'm going to call her Miss Penny all the time throughout this thing.
Of course.
But she came in, was it the second video?
I think probably so. They had a choreographer for the first video, I believe, and then Sandy Duncan, who was playing the mother in the first 3 videos, contacted Penny and said, "We really need somebody to be a choreographer for these videos that we're doing. Would you be interested?" And so she put her in touch with the folks there at Barney, and I mean that's where it all started then. And so she was part of that team throughout, the initial PBS shows and all that kind of stuff, and then on the stage versions around the world that she directed or choreographed or choreographed. So yeah, it was her life for several years.
Well, I know all three of you as theater people. I've seen all of you on stage at one point or the other. Nelson, I
Runs in the blood.
don't know what you're doing, Nelson, if you're not on stage, because I see so many shows that you do.
It's true. I try to keep busy. I'm retired now, but I still try to keep busy, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to do shows still and work with a repertory group that keeps me busy and involved. So yeah, it's fun though. I love doing it. Always have.
So what was that like for theater people? And then this Purple Dinosaur and Sandy Duncan and all this comes calling, and she gets involved in this. At that time, it was very small. It was very small.
Yeah.
The video.
Yeah. Well, in point of fact, probably at that point, I don't know, a little bit when you did Annie out in Louisville, probably how old were you then? You remember?
It was not long before or after, I think, because it was around that same time frame. I feel like
That's
it was
kind of
like
what I was thinking.
94, 95, maybe somewhere around there.
Yeah. Yeah. So we moved back here in 1984, and I didn't do any theater for about 10 years.
Wow.
And it's funny because Penny's the one that got me back into it. And she knew that, well, I'd taken Becca to do an audition for Annie to play one of the orphans, and she got cast. And so I was going to be taking her out there anyway. And Penny, unbeknownst to me, contacted the director and says, "You don't know this, but Nelson used to stage manage professionally. You should get him involved out there." And sure enough, then they asked me to assistant stage manage the show. And then before the show actually went up, one of the guys dropped out. So then I ended up playing bit parts in the show along with Becca in the orphan role too. So that was kind of fun.
Well, I could see that because, like I said, I've seen you so many times in so many different roles. So
Yeah.
when Penny got involved in that, I mean, what was she thinking with those videos and with Barney? And because I mean, we all kind of know the story a little bit, but the costume was rough and everything was rough.
That is true. Yeah. But I mean, initially she just thought it was going to be for those 3 videos, the 3 videos that they were doing to distribute or whatever. And it wasn't a long-term thing in anybody's mind, I don't think, at that point. So as things developed and they, got in with PBS and all of that, and it was a big part of that from the ground up, and I will say, and I think I'm not being prejudiced about this, but she was very much the heart and soul of Barney for a long time. And, she was very protective of Barney and wanted to make sure that nobody was overshadowing what we were trying to do, what they were trying to do, and because Barney was really something from the heart, it's something good and true and lovely. And other people were trying to bash him and all that kind of stuff, but Penny was very defensive of Barney, I'll tell you.
Oh, I know. I know. And I absolutely 1000% agree with heart and soul.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for, my goodness, several years now. And the Barney people that come on, I don't think there's anyone that doesn't mention Miss Penny in one aspect or other and what she meant to them. For me personally, and I'll talk about several of the performers. I'd never been in a costume in my life. I wasn't a dancer. I wasn't a performer. I was a musician that stumbled into a role and went with, you always say yes,
Yeah.
as you do in this business. Yeah. And I mean, she made me feel so good. She worked with me. She helped me. I mean, it was just, I'd never seen anything like this because obviously I was scared to death. I'm doing these tours. The next thing I know, I'm about to go to Radio City.
Yeah. Yeah. And she was great with kids, I mean, she could relate to them so well. She was used to having taught dance for kids of all ages, and so forth for years. And she was just really good with relating to kids. She was very much a kid at heart anyway. So, there was that. But yeah, she was just really good, and I think that's because that's how she kind of embodied that spirit, Barney. You know, that she could relate to the kids, and she know how it was benefiting them as a result, and so she felt like she was really doing good just by perpetuating that. You know.
I do, and and it's interesting because I've talked to several of the kids, and it's interesting because a lot of them were either could dance or could sing, but they usually were great at both.
Yeah.
And they always talk about how Penny was so great about that, helping them with the one area they didn't, and focusing on the area that they were and that they felt so comfortable. And working with kids that young, real challenge.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
But I think to Dad's point, she believed in it so much, and she was so good with kids and how she related to them. And so she kind of helped them believe in themselves to kind of generate that confidence and become who they ultimately were in those roles. And as they grew, I know that she just had a huge impact on them at very pivotal points of their lives and what they were doing. Not many kids start out their lives doing that kind of thing, but she just had a way of helping them believe in themselves and holding them accountable and saying, this is what we need from you, and I know you can do it, and helping them get there.
Which is funny when you say that, because there was both sides of that, right? That she was so supportive, but we also knew, right? We knew we had to do the work. We knew if we didn't do the work or something, we knew, she was keeping an eye on us.
Yeah. Well, I think that comes with respect too, though. I think there were, at least, from my point of view, there were a lot of people who really had a respect for her, and they knew she was going to hold them accountable, and she was going to lay it down in a sense, and hold them responsible for everything and the things they needed to do. But she did it in a very loving way, and again, generating that confidence in themselves, and they wanted to be responsible and to do well. And I think she helped guide them to do that while she could be tough, a tough love at times, but everybody knew that, and they respected that about her, kind of as a teacher in some sorts.
But you also knew she had your back always.
100%. Yeah.
Always. Nelson, because you were around at that time, I want to talk about, because I don't think people understand, Barney was all about, and Barney's famous for the songs and the movements, Mr. Knickerbocker and Raindrops and Green Grass, I mean, go on and on and on. That was all Penny.
Yeah.
That was all Penny.
I mean,
that was all Penny. All of
exactly.
that stuff. We were learning it, and I was thinking, my gosh, how simple but fun, and that was such an important part. And then when we go out to these big crowds, the reaction, they all knew all that choreography. I mean, did she have any idea when she was creating that, what an impact that was going to have, which is still to this day?
Yeah, I don't think she, until later in the process, I don't think she really expected that or understood the impact that her work was going to have on kids all over the place. Unbeknownst to them, she was behind all of that and kind of creating it. But it's true, there was a lot of what Barney became and the kids became, that was as a result of what Penny created, and was able to get them to do. And then, like you said, when you go to a public event or whatever, and the kids are all doing the same moves and all singing the songs word for word, it's just, but that speaks to the power that the whole Barney persona had at that time in particular. I mean, it related so well with the kids, and they related to it so well that they wanted to just do it. They wanted to get up and do all the moves and sing all the songs and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, trust me, when we saw McKenna earlier before we started recording this, my granddaughter, Becca's daughter, and she sees something and she wants to sing it, she wants to dance it, she wants to do it, and that's the way kids are. And so there's just a lot of that was Penny's doing all the way around.
It was just incredible, because I did the PR for 5 years, and I would go out, did JCPenney's and things of that nature. And then they said, can you dance? And that's where I ended up meeting Penny and all that stuff. And they start sending me out on these 30-minute sing-alongs, you know, and there's 200 people in the room, and then there's 500 people in the room, and then it's 1,000. And at one point I did 3 shows, 16,000 people per.
Wow.
And you're doing Knickerbocker, and every single person is in there doing that type of stuff. And I think she did such an amazing job of it being simple for kids, fun. I mean, all the aspects of it, I think was pretty brilliant. That, and as you just mentioned, I don't think she realized, or maybe none of us did, how big this was going to get.
Well, I really think until, I mean, it was cool that PBS picked it up, you know, I mean, that to start with, that was like, oh, this is really cool and everything. But I really don't think until, like I say, later in the process, even after the PBS shows were pretty much done and Penny's going to Sri Lanka and, you know, Germany and what, I mean, going to places all over Australia, you know, and things like that, that she really understood that, man, this is worldwide, you know, and we're bringing Barney, which has been so effective and really popular here in the States. We're now reaching a whole new group of people, you know, that have not experienced that before. And for her, that was a lot of fun, I think.
Well, I gotta gush on you a little bit, because I remember meeting you Radio City. So I knew who you were, but I didn't know anything about you being in theater or any aspects of that. And so you were basically understudying everyone.
Yes. And that was actually really big for me, because at that point, and Dad could correct me probably if I'm wrong, but it had just been dance mainly for me. The only times really I'd been on stage was, you know, dance recitals and stuff like that. And that was my life since I was 3. And so this was a huge opportunity, you know, to be able to do this and to go on to go up there, I should say, as the understudy. And then there was a performance where it was like, you know, I don't even know, 20 minutes until curtain or whatever, and they're like, hey, you know, Min has a fever and she can't go on. You've got 20 minutes to go over the lines and go on for her. And it was scary, but it was a huge deal.
Oh, I remember
Right.
that very well. I remember that very well. And I've told some of these stories of the aspect that we actually never, if you remember this, ran through a full run through on that stage. We never ran through a full run through on that stage. And I remember the night we got done and going to dinner with Penny, and she was like, oh, we got it. We're all going to be good. And then this happens with Min, and you've got to go on, which is, she's got to have, I'm guessing, Nelson, I mean, obviously she has full trust in her, but it's also her daughter. Like, she's got to be a proud mom at the same time as a choreographer.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was a proud papa, I'll tell you, because we really didn't expect that Becca was going to get to be on stage at any point. You know, I mean, she was there to be the understudy and everything, but you figure with a limited run, what are the odds that one of the kids actually going to be, you know, unable to perform or whatever? Right. And so the very fact that she was able to go on was a real proud moment for me, especially because I used to work at Radio City. 10 years before that, I'd been a stage manager at Radio City. And so it was like a homecoming for me to go back and see some of the guys that I had worked with before, and then to also experience my wife is in charge of, you know, all this stuff that's going on with the choreography and the kids and all that kind of stuff. And my daughter is now going to perform that night, you know, so it's just like, wow, I was just busting my buttons that night. So, yeah.
Were you, I mean, what were you think? Because obviously I don't know, we all knew you were going to be fine, but I mean, the emotion you had to have had knowing that she's about to go on at radio, and these are sold out shows.
Oh yeah, it was crazy. I mean, what Radio City seats like 5,000 seats or something. I've forgotten what it is exactly, but it's a lot of people in those seats. And yeah, it was a really fun experience for me. And again, I was just so proud of both of them that it was a happy time for sure. Plus just getting to go back to New York, which was fun.
And you made it in the video, the Radio City video. You're in the audience. It's
That's
during the
right.
Knickerbocker. You make an appearance in the audience.
I'd forgotten about that. You're right. Yeah.
And I didn't know that.
He looks a little different, a little slightly younger, but you know.
Yeah, the beard wasn't probably there at that point. Certainly not as white, but
But yeah, it was cool. It was a really cool
yeah,
family experience too.
yeah, for
What do
sure.
what do you remember of that time, Becca? I mean, do you remember elephants and all the things of that? I mean, what do you remember of that experience?
You know, it's funny because I was so young that I don't remember a whole lot. I remember bits and pieces. And I definitely remember that performance having to go on. And I just have these visuals of being in the dressing room and them telling me that, and then just sitting down with the script. And just, I remember the lights, you know, from the mirrors and stuff, just getting ready, and obviously very nervous, but also trying to really talk myself up and saying, you know, this is what I came to do. This is why I'm here. And now the fact that I get to do this is pretty awesome. And then I remember afterward, you know, my mom and my dad being, you know, there for it all and being so excited for me and to have had that moment. And the one that sticks out too is being able to sing with Baby Bop. There was a number that Min sings with Baby Bop in the show. And it was such, I can't even remember what it is now. I don't feel like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. I don't know, something like that. But it was just one of those moments, just so sweet and so vulnerable. And the fact that I was getting to do that on that stage with that many people was really cool.
Well, and let's talk about that, because when you mentioned Baby Bop, you're talking about one of my favorite people on this planet, Jeff Ayers. I just love that man to death. And what was that for them with you? Because they knew, obviously, because I was doing a secondary role in that. So I was up in the balcony, all doing all that crazy. I was kind of stunt Barney in that show. But, you know, knowing that Jeff's there, there's actually the two Jeffs at the time, Jeff, and David. And knowing them and knowing Jeff, did you have any concept of that, understanding they were in the costumes and what that aspect of it?
Yeah, I did. I think I had been around it long enough at that point to know, but it's an interesting dynamic, you know, because, and especially this was in the eyes of my mom too, that Barney was very real, even though we all knew he's a costume character and these are people inside the costumes. They're also very real, and what they stand for is very special. So it was interesting, the dynamic of, you know, this person that's in there, and you know that it is just a costume character, but it's also somebody who's been an important part of your life, and you see what they stand for. And when you're on that stage and you're in their presence, that is who they are. They are not that person in the costume. But I think, and obviously I haven't talked to them about it, but I think, you know, they knew me as little bit as well. I think everybody knew me as Miss Penny's daughter from a very young age when it started. And so it was like a family just in general, you know. I was that little girl that they knew as little bit, and then being able to do this, and you know, growing up, anything I did with Barney, I had to audition too. You know, I had to do it the technical way. I wasn't just a shoe-in just because I was Miss Penny's daughter. But I think that it helped knowing that I was surrounded by all of this support, and it was comfortable because I had been around it and these were people that I knew. And then to get out there with the characters and who they are, it was very special, and it made it a little bit more comfortable, I think, for me, in just feeling that support all the way around. And knowing, I do actually, thinking about it now, I remember Jeff squeezing my hand, like as Baby Bop, you know, just giving me that little squeeze during that number, just that kind of extra little confidence of, I'm here for you, you know, we're here in this together. So it was really special.
Well, that didn't surprise me, because that's what he would do.
Yeah.
There's no question he would have done that. Had you been to New York before, or was that your first time there?
Well, I was born in New York.
Oh, well, there you go.
But when we moved back here, I was only 9 months old, so I don't
go.
remember much about New York. But I think, Dad, that was probably my first time back to New York, right?
For sure. Yeah.
And then, you know, I've been to New York since, but I think that was probably my first time back. And so being out in the city and doing certain things and going to, you know, see where I grew up, or not grew up, but where I was born and lived and everything. That was my first recollection of New York itself.
Nelson, I can imagine that had to have been one of the challenges for Penny, because a lot of us hadn't been. I know some of them had, Julie Johnson and several of them, but then others, cast members, I mean, we were pretty raw going up there, to say the least.
Yeah, but I will say, and I wanted to say this when we were talking about David and everybody else, but it was the people that were involved that made it all happen. You know, I mean, not only Penny, but just all of the people that were the characters that pulled this all together and made it work. You know, it wasn't just one person giving direction and saying, you know, this is what needs to happen here, and that suddenly it just, you know, came into fruition. I mean, they all worked their butts off and worked very hard to bring those characters to life and make them very real to the kids. And I think, you know, that speaks to the group that we were dealing with. You know, that everybody there was very genuine and nice, and, you know, worked really hard and those kinds of things. So that's how they pulled it off.
Well, and absolutely, I think there was a thing, and I speak for myself. You know, I think about the tour. Tour is such a great example. Barney's Big Surprise. That was obviously a massive undertaking, and I had never done something. I mean, I remember getting a phone call from Sloan Coleman that summer, you know, and I was 25, 26. And she said, you want to go on tour? And I couldn't understand the concept of what she was talking about. Right? You're going to be gone 9 months out of the year. This is going to be like 5 years. You know, I was like, well, sure. That's, you know, that sounds so much fun. And I just remember Penny just being reassuring, and you know, really kind of explaining, and she trusted all of us and what we did and all those aspects, and that collaboration, I think, which was so important, because she had obviously a better idea than I did what it takes to do something that long.
Sure. Well, I mean, she'd grown up doing theater, right? I mean, from the standpoint that she worked at Dallas Summer Musicals for years, and, you know, was a dancer and or dance captain or whatever. And then when we put together Peter Pan, you know, she was the swing, you know, for all those roles and that kind of stuff too. So she was very familiar with theater and knew what touring was about. We toured with Peter Pan, and she, I think, had done some summer stock tours probably before that. So she was much more familiar with the theatrical part of it, I suspect, than most of you guys were, you know. But she was able to, I think, hopefully anyway, from what you're saying, I get the idea that she was able to use that knowledge to help you through that process.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's funny, those memories are like yesterday. I mean, they really, I think that was such a strong, impactful. I mean, and I presume you were there on some aspect. Well, you were there at opening. You were there at the opening weekend, weren't you?
For
Barney's Big Surprise.
Probably. I don't remember specifically, but I suspect that I was.
We were in Will Rogers in the barn. And that whole thing was just the craziest thing I'd ever seen. I would obviously never worked with all the tour people, all the, you know, we had rock and roll roadies, all of those aspects. And I think Penny was really good at introducing us. She kind of just grabbed us all in.
Yeah. She was very good at being able to work with people and bring the best out in them, I think, you know. And she would understand them. She would, like you said, she would nurture them and bring them along, you know, as best she could, and continue to reinforce the good things and make sure they're doing it correctly. And you wanted to do it right for her, right?
Oh yeah,
because you absolutely, you know, I'm speaking personally, but you absolutely loved her, you know, and so you wanted to do well for her because she was so invested in it and wanted to make sure that it was done right.
Yeah, loved her, admired her, respected her so much, and what she did for all of us. I mean, we were most of us weren't dancers. most of us had actually never been in a costume at one point. Now I had been doing Barney for about 6 years at that point, but a lot of us had different experiences going in, and she just kind of took those personalities and all of that and threw it in there. I recently just talked to Jennifer Romano. I don't know if you remember Jennifer. She was one of the Baby Bops.
Oh, okay.
And she replaced one of the actors in the end of the first year because physically she was having an issue. And so Jennifer came in. Within a period of 16 hours, she auditioned, rehearsed, and was on stage in Chicago within 16 hours.
Wow.
And that doesn't happen. And she'd never been in a costume in her life. And she was claustrophobic. And yes, she just tell me the whole story. And that's where Penny came in. You know, that's where Penny came in to take away that pressure and just focus on each individual, you know, and to say you're going to be okay and you're going to do great. You know, I think that's the stuff that Penny was so great at.
Yeah.
Well, I think too that when you're passionate about something, that passion rubs off, right? And so Mom was so passionate about what she was doing and everything Barney stood for. And so when you worked with her, you felt that enthusiasm and that passion and everything. And so it made you feel it too. And you got that same vibe of what it was all about. And it made it that much more important to make it happen and to do it and to love what you were doing. And when you love what you're doing, it's not work, you know, and it just, it all happens more organically. And then even when things are tough, you want to be there for it. You want to show up, you want to work hard, you want to do it. You want to do it for that person who is expecting it from you, you know, and then she makes you expect it from yourself too. And it just, that passion then just kind of feeds through everybody and helps to bring everybody together too, because they've got that commonality no matter what.
Yeah, on those breaks from that tour during the summer, I know that's when I was coming to see you guys. And I was going to these different shows. And I will tell you, Nelson, I learned a lot from watching that too. I'd never been in theater. I'd never seen that stuff before. And the professionalism and I don't know, there was just another level to it. I was obviously seeing Penny do it, but now I was seeing you do it, and I was seeing you a little bit do it. And it was I don't know, it just inspired me even more.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it's just one of those things that our family has been involved in theater one way or the other for years. In fact, Penny's mother, father were both in theater, you know. And so, I mean, it's just kind of passed down. And I suspect that there's another clone that's on her way up through the ranks now. Would you say I'm right a little bit?
I would say yes.
Yeah. So,
No, it's in the water, it's in the blood.
It really
must
is.
be. It must
There's
be.
no denying it.
But I wanted to say something just to go back for a second.
Sure.
We were talking about a little bit, you know, being thrust in at the last minute to go on stage and that kind of thing. I will say that she has many of the same qualities as Penny, which is a very good thing. But she's very capable of just seeing something and it registers with her, and then she can do it and work with other people to make that happen too. Because I've watched recently, in fact, I've watched things that she's choreographed, and I get nothing but good comments about it from other people as well. And so I feel like, you know, Penny is still here in some respects because she lives through Becca and then through McKenna and whoever else, right? But yeah, she was a very strong presence, and she continues to be a strong presence, I think.
Oh, I absolutely believe she's here. I absolutely believe that, and that doesn't surprise me any bit. With little bit, I do remember at Radio City, like it really, you know, obviously I think everyone felt more worse for men, not concerned about Little Bit being able to do it. Like I think we all knew, oh, she's gonna be fine because Min was sick or something of that nature, and we knew it wasn't, you know, she wasn't serious. But I think there was so much confidence, and Penny obviously had it in you, that I don't think there was a concern. We've been seeing you through rehearsal. So maybe that's a lot of pressure on the kid, but I think everyone just thought, oh, she'll be fine, which you were.
Well, thanks. And that's good to hear. Obviously, I don't get that side of it. And,
Sure.
at that point in time, other than just people, saying, yeah, you can do it. You're gonna be great. And again, that was so long ago that it's just, I just get those bits and pieces. So I appreciate that, hearing that.
Well, no, it's absolute truth. Absolute truth. I got to tell you, I got both of you here to tell you that, one of in my 22 years, one of my toughest moments was that I was out. We had started our second year on Barney's Big Surprise, and I think we were in Nashville. And I don't know exactly what happened, but all of a sudden I became claustrophobic. After playing the role for like 7 years, I had a panic attack when we were doing the rehearsals to bring the road back the second year, to the point where I had to run off. And Penny came in the locker room I was in, and I was shaking. I was really not understanding what was happening. And what she did she just like took over. She could tell what was going on. She could tell I was very serious. She was able to calm me down. And it probably took at least 2 months before I got back in the swing of things. And she had a plan for me. I was still doing shows, but she was like, you need to do this and let's work on this. And got me back again.
Wow.
And it's the craziest thing I've ever been involved in. But what she did for me at that period, it will always stick with me.
I had no idea. Wow.
Me neither.
It was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. And I maybe because we were in the costume so much that maybe I overdid it, but whatever it may be, she was there to just get me back in line.
She
Yeah.
was a trooper for sure. And yeah,
I,
she knew how to relate to people. She just was very, very cognizant of people's issues or problems or whatever and wanting to help out. And she was very good at doing that.
she was, the other thing that I always think about her was the Macy's Day Parade.
Mhm.
Because she did all. So for people that didn't know, because we were non-union, every time that Macy's came up, you had to use a different crew of actors. I don't know if you guys knew that.
No, I don't think so.
For the first like 6 years, it was different. So it would be me and and then it'd be a different Barney, different Baby Bop, different BJ. And that changed near the end. I actually got to do it twice. But I remember, because you're in the costume for about 3 hours on stage, and then the TV part happens actually at the end. So you've been working the parade, and then there you are, the choreography in the 3 minutes on TV. And we would all joke about this all the time. I think I was with Jeff, and it was like, we knew we had to call Penny when we got done to see if we should get on the plane to come back to Dallas, or if we should find a place to live in New York.
Oh my goodness.
We were so nervous about that. We'd be like, oh, I did a hop or I
What do we
missed
do?
it.
What do we do?
Do you want to call her or should I call her?
That's funny.
There was just, and I'm guessing she's just always that way. I mean, it was, obviously we had love for each other and respect for each other. When you got in rehearsals and when you learn these routines, it was, you just didn't want to let her down.
Yeah.
We talked about her still being here. And I'm making a confession here that probably a little bit I've already made this too, but ever since her passing, I'm much more emotional than I was before. And because she would cry at the drop of a hat. She cried for happy, she cried for sad, and she was very emotionally invested in everything. But since she's passed, she has bequeathed all of that to me now, I think. And so now I'm much more emotional at things that I think are silly. You know, I get very emotional when things happen that she would have gone, oh, you know, on TV or something. Now I get that feeling, and it's like I start tearing up or something, you know, and that kind of thing. She still lives through me as well. So just
Uh,
it's really funny because I know that's what she's left with me, you know.
I love that. I love that. I can remember so many times me and Kyle and Jeff, we would come over to your house and do rehearsals.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, do you remember that? The three of us coming over to you guys' house and oh my gosh.
Yeah, I remember y'all being over there working on things in the living room or wherever. Yep.
Yeah,
It was all encompassing. Yeah.
yeah, because you try to explain this to people of a show that was that big, but we really were. We were all just kind of family, and we went to people's houses. It was, I know it was a large production, but in a lot of ways, it was just a small. She was just, no, we're not going to do rehearsal at this. We're just going to meet at my house. Okay,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
over there.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
yeah, go ahead.
go
Deb.
ahead. No, you go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I have to tell you from our perspective too, that mom absolutely felt like you all were family. I mean, she talked about all of you that she worked with, and she, I think, just kind of took over that almost motherly role, even though she was the director or choreographer and it was a very professional thing. She 100% felt like all of you were family and spoke of you as family and spoke of all of you very highly. And we felt like you were family. And see, Dad, okay.
She did it to you too. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Anyway, but I want you to know that as well from the other side too, that it was definitely a mutual respect and that mutual feeling of being family. She loved all of you so much and always spoke very highly of you, and like I said, just you were family to her and very, very important.
Were you going to say something else?
Just because you guys spent so much time together, you know, and it was a very family thing. I mean, you all like brothers and sisters and mother and whatever, you know.
Yeah.
But the fact that, as you were saying, this started out so small, you know, it was such in Allen, Texas, you know. I mean, it's just like who knew where this was going to end up going ultimately. There was no way, I don't think that anybody expected that. And it just took off. But even at that, it still had a very family feel to it for most of the time anyway, from what I understand. You know, that
Yeah.
I wasn't privy to everything, but certainly at the beginning, it was very much a very small group of people putting out videos or putting, videos on PBS or whatever. But it was all still that small group that were taking care of it, doing it very professionally. But it was really still a small town feel within the group, I think, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's why it works. I've talked about so much. A lot of us were hired because of, I mean, when I know 100% I was hired because of my heart is what they told me, not because of how because I'd never been in a costume. But Dennis and Cheryl and Kathy Parker, that's what they did. They watched me with kids. They watched to see how I was. And I think that's why Penny was so important, because she had to help me with the other part. And Jeff too. Jeff would tell you he was never a dancer. My God, was he Baby Bop? I mean, he's embodied that.
Yes.
Even when I see
Yes.
him, he just
Yeah.
embodies that, and it was amazing. But I think, if I haven't told this part, so my mother taught me the first choreography when I did the sing along. They asked me if I could dance. I said sure. Totally lied. And I took the videos because my mom was a dancer. And so I showed her the videos and gave her this, cassette tape. And we learned, I made a fake costume in my garage and I learned it all. And so when we were doing Radio City a little bit, we got done one day and I asked Penny if I could perform it for her, if she would watch me. And I did the whole routine and she gave me 1 note. And it meant everything to me because, one, My mom thought, but it was, of course, it was Penny's choreography. And, she just was that person that the respect and the love and I mean, I was scared to death. I was like, but it needs to be right. So if it's not right, and she was like, I love it. I'm so proud of you. You just keep doing what you're doing. And, and all the hot days in those costumes, that stuff just keeps you going.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that is
So
not
it was,
what you all did.
yeah, I couldn't do it. That's for sure.
Well, there was just that we all knew. And this is the other part. And I know Nelson Penny had to talk about with you, which is the kids. And I'm not talking about the cast kids, but the audience and the effect that she had. I mean, she got to see this too.
Yeah.
What would she say about that? What was her feeling about that? The effect that this purple dinosaur and these characters were having on the world and on children.
It meant the world to her. I mean, it really did. That she was so involved with the love of Barney from, for all those years, and was very defensive, about how he was portrayed or not portrayed, and all of the corporate ins and outs of, that were going on behind the scenes at times and that kind of thing. She was very protective of Barney, and because she could see the effect that this had on kids, and especially when we were doing but
Oh, you
when they were
are.
doing,
You absolutely are.
especially when they were doing the live shows and that kind of thing, where you see the faces of the kids in the audience, and you see them doing it. And then you think back to everything that's led up to that, and you go, I've really made a difference. This is something that's impactful to these kids, and I want it to stay that way. I don't want it to be changed, or modified in some way that's going to be not as impactful or as relatable to the kids as it has been up to this point. Because Barney's all about love, and that was what she tried to put out all the time. And I think to your point earlier, if that comes through the costume, then you're doing it right. Right. If you're giving it that experience, and that love is emitting from the costume, it doesn't matter in one sense what your moves are, as long as you're relating to those kids, right?
Absolutely. And the part I love about all of that too is that every single person involved felt that way. And that's why it
Yeah.
worked, in my opinion. Right. It didn't
Yeah.
matter what your position, whether you were a director or costume or props or whoever. I mean, everyone was all in. Everyone
Absolutely.
understood the mission and understood about, as you were just saying, the love. I mean, that part of it was just incredible.
Yeah, and I remember mom commenting on, they would get letters in and stuff like that of stories of kids who were impacted by Barney, and how a kid who was slow developmentally started watching Barney and was suddenly, vocabulary increasing, or I mean, little things like that about the positive impact that he was having. And she would say, this is why I do it, and this is what Barney means. And that overshadowed anything else. And that was the core of who he was, what he stood for, and why you all did it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that's interesting, and don't worry, I probably will tear up too. But when your mom got sick, we met for lunches. I mean, as long as I knew her, we met for lunches, and we always went to Chili's. Always got the same thing. And I was talking to Dennis DeShazer, and he goes, "You went to Chili's too?" She was doing this with a lot of Bernie people. Do it. I mean, never stop. To be very honest with you, I never thought, I mean, she was such a strong person and when I say that, her faith and all aspects of her were so strong. I always thought she'd get better.
So
And,
did we.
and
Yeah.
she did this with everyone. She not only when we were working, but that relationship and that strength. And would always tell you how she cared about you. And obviously know how much she loved both of you because she talked about you guys all the time. And we would go to these shows. I would drive all over the place to go to these shows. And so proud of both of you. And I that's why I'm doing this episode, because everyone needs to know that, because we talk about what's going on in this world, and a person and a family that's about love and putting all that love out there, which, you know, was a big part of the fuel of all of this.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I know that that's why she cared a lot about what people thought of Barney. And to hear negative things about Barney coming, you know, from other sources, that didn't set well with her at all, you know. And if somebody was in some way disrespectful of Barney, she was the first to back him up. I guarantee you, you know, and you could see that fire in her eyes light up, because it meant a lot to her. And she felt like she was impacting a lot of people in the world with positive vibes, you know, and love and faith and all those good things. And to hear somebody say something disparaging about it, or make fun of, because obviously for grown-ups, they don't necessarily understand it, right? They just get tired of hearing the songs.
Right.
But yeah, she knew though that it was impacting those kids, and that was the important thing, because she loved kids and she wanted the very best for them. And Barney was giving them the very best in a lot of ways.
Well, yeah, I've said before that there's nothing like doing a live performance, and you're doing an I Love You song, and you're talking about a great big hug, and you see all of the kids hug their parents. Like, you can't, that just doesn't happen, right? But their good friend Barney, you know, and he's so innocent, and he loves them, and they know that, and there they are hugging their parents. And these parents who 30 minutes beforehand did not like this purple dinosaur, all of a sudden, this purple dinosaur is everything.
Yeah. Yeah. He's had a big impact all around.
He is. I can't end this show without, I got to find out what's going on with both of you though. Nelson, what do you, now I know you, as you mentioned, you've been retired, but I know you haven't stopped acting, because I see it. I can't imagine how many shows you're doing. And if you're not, you're at some theater going to see some show.
Well, that's true. That's true. I've remarried, and my wife and I, Nancy, will have been married for, well, we were married for 4 years as of April 11th. So, and we go and see shows a lot. We, you know, because we have a big group of people that we've done shows with. She and I met at the theater, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of, you know, a lot of ties there. And I've done 3 shows already this year. And I've got another one coming up in August, I think, is the next one that I know of anyway. So yeah, I keep busy, and I love doing it. I love doing it, because for me, that's my way of giving back. You know, I mean, yes, it benefits me because I enjoy it. You know, I enjoy acting. I enjoy having fun singing, all those good things. But if I can help somebody that's in the audience have a better day, you know, or a better time, or just to get away from their daily problems, to come and enjoy a couple of hours at the theater, then I think I'm doing good. And I like that.
Well, and I love, because it's like, you know, I'll see you in the Titanic, and then it's Addams Family, and it's all these different shows. I know, I love the diversity of it. Like, what is he doing now? What is he doing now?
Something new, you know. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
And then, of course, a little bit, as we've talked about, your mother. You know, goodness gracious, you remind me so much of your mom. It's in all the good ways. It's amazing. So, but I didn't realize, so you're still in the theater and aspects of it? You're still doing theater?
I am. Yeah, I've been in the medical field and healthcare now for the last 14 years. I'm currently at UT Southwestern, working there, but I'm able to at least still stay involved in theater. My husband is involved in theater too. And so now, with having 2 kids, we kind of have to switch off. So I haven't been on stage as much, but I've been choreographing quite a bit. Just did back-to-back shows. I'm queuing up for another one in just a couple of weeks, and then I've got another one planned for the fall. And so just from a personal perspective, it's pretty cool because, you know, I just kind of feel like I mean, I love doing it and it's in my blood and I've always danced and everything, but the choreography aspect, every time I finish a project and I'm like, whoa, I just did that, you know, and I think back to watching my mom sit there with her notebook, you know, and listening to the songs over and over again and coming up with this stuff. And of course, I never really appreciated what it took. I always saw the final result and I saw her work that went into it, but I never really appreciated what all went into it and just the creativity behind it. And, you know, when you're working with a lot of different personalities and a lot of different levels and people who are very technical, some who aren't, you know, and trying to bring that all together for a production can take a lot. And so I really appreciate that a lot now, and just appreciate sort of what she has given me as well as my dad from just being raised in that and being around it all of my life, and now getting to create myself and put that out on the stage is really neat. It's a lot of fun.
And obviously you have some kids now that are involved in this too. I mean,
Yeah, we've got a 5-year-old daughter, and then our son is going to be 3 in just a few weeks. And they, you know, they'll put on little shows for us in the living room. McKenna actually has a really good voice. She loves to sing and she's actually a very good singer. They're both in dance class this year and will be at recital together in a few weeks. And so I would not be surprised if they will be on the stage or behind the scenes directing in some fashion.
that's awesome. And I've seen your husband playing guitar, so I know he's part of this. I've seen those videos. So yeah, I can tell. I was like, oh, they're perfect for each other.
Musical and theatrical family for sure. Yeah.
That's awesome. I can't thank you guys enough for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carey. This is great. And it's so great to see you and get to kind of relive this and talk about this because, you know, we don't get to do this very often. And there aren't that many people who, you know, you're close to that really went through it with you and understand. So it's kind of cool to get back to it and relive those moments. And it's a special connection for sure and forever.
And it is, and the bond of everyone, it's really amazing. Because it really does. I mean, it just feels like yesterday when I'm seeing both of you. It really doesn't. There's a relationships like this are just something. It's not hard to talk to you. It's not like I feel like, you know, I've just known you forever, and you mean the world to me.
Well, it's been very special for us to be able to bring back to light some of the great things that Penny did, and you know, just to, as Becca said, to relive some of that and just kind of bask in the glow of all the good things that she did.
Absolutely. Well, it's so good to see you. And now I'm coming to a show, so we just got to figure out what that is because I've got to come to the show. I've got to come to the show. It's just been way too long.
All right. Keep in touch. We'll make it happen.
I will. Thank you for watching Purple Roads. Remember to keep your eyes, ears, and your heart open, and you'll find your purple road. We'll see you real soon.